Today I'm going to share about fostering and bio kids, the good, the bad, and the beautiful. I'm going to share a few tips, and at the end I will share my final thoughts, so make sure to stick around. Today, I'm going to answer a question that was posed by one of my YouTube viewers. And basically what that is what is it like with bio kids as well as foster kids? So today I'm going to talk about that a little bit, the good, the bad, and the beautiful, my tips, and then at the end, a few of my final thoughts. So let's get started. What is the good parts about having biological kids and trying to foster at the same time? So when we started foster parenting in January 2006, I had a son and a biological daughter, and, they attended school, they were in music and sports and all the activities, and, it was a really great life, something that a lot of people maybe would dream about. We had the white picket fence and just all the things, but what was missing was that I wanted to teach my kids that there was more to the world. So we started actually fostering baby kittens at a local shelter that was near us. We took them in just to see and kind of gauge with our kids how they would handle taking something in, caring for it, nurturing it, and then having it leave to see how they would process that. Would they be able to love all these little batches of baby kittens well and be able to let them go? And so granted, a lot of people don't need to foster kittens before they start foster care, but for us, that was just kind of a slow way to get started into foster care, and it seemed to work pretty well for our family. So let's talk about the good parts of having biological kids and foster kids. For us, it really was to teach my biological kids that there was more in the world. And so it was a really great way to expose them to the world without having them, sending them out into the world, maybe into a homeless shelter or, across the ocean to a third world country. It was a way to bring in situations and different people and different lifestyles and, a lot of brokenness and hurt, and have them see the world in the safety of our own home. So like I said, life was pretty great. My biological kids were doing swimming and sports and music and all these things, but I really wanted to teach my biological kids that there was more in the world. And so what fostering did for our family was it shifted the focus away from them being kind of the center of our home. Quite honestly, I know our culture is very kid-centered, families are very kid-centered, and so I wanted them to shift their focus out to where they could see needs around them and they could participate. So a third way that fostering was really good for my biological kids was that it really taught them to help to take care of someone besides themselves. My kids were older. There's now a 10-year gap between my first adopted daughter and my biological kids. And so they really got to, help to make bottles or maybe help to feed babies, teach them to crawl, or help kids take their first steps. And so it has been really, really monumental, and not just my biological kids, but my adopted daughter as well, my older daughter who's now 14. I remember when we got one placement, there was a little girl, and all she did when she came to our home was just cry and cry and cry. My daughter would go up to her and she would start to sing really soft lullabies, and it was this little girl singing that was able to soothe this little baby who was 1 year old at the time. And so it really, it teaches our biological kids or our adopted kids, whoever's primarily in your home, it really teaches them to take the focus off of themselves and to put it on someone else. It teaches them to be kind and compassionate and caring and selfless. And those are really great ways that fostering has benefited my kids. I asked my 14-year-old right before I did this video, what are some ways that fostering has really been good for our home and for our family? And one thing she said was that there's always kids to play with. My older adult biological kids are grown and out of the house, and this 14-year-old daughter of mine, she would have really been the only child in our home if we hadn't kept fostering. And so she's been monumental in just loving on these kids. She's had kids to play with and kids to help to teach things to. And so her favorite thing about having foster kids is really to teach them and play with them and to have other kids around her. So what are maybe some of the bad or or harder ways that fostering can impact your biological kids. I know I've heard many stories where people will take in foster children and they will be the same age as their biological children. And usually for their biological children, that's not a problem. They love to play and to share and again interact with foster kids. However, for foster kids, especially if they've changed a lot of homes, if they have any kind of trauma or attachment issues, having a biological child that's stable and secure and had the same parents that they are trying to really connect with, it can create some problems. And so that can be a really hard aspect about fostering and having biological children if they are the same age. At the same time, I know a family who they have foster kids that are the same age as their daughter. She's kind of like the only girl that's in their home, and for them it just works better to take an older child and to be able to give their own daughter someone to play with and connect with. And so it really just depends on the child, it depends on your child, and it depends on the family and the situation, how much access there is to the foster parents. Is there one foster parent or two? Will that child feel like it has to contend or fight for attention from you? And will that child feel jealous? So a lot of the nature maybe of your biological children or your adopted children will impact whether a foster placement that is the same age will be effective or have a good outcome or not. Another bad or maybe a hard thing about taking in a foster child that would be the same age as your biological child or your adopted children might be as if you don't have a lot of space. So I know for biological or kids who are already permanent part of your family, they feel like these foster kids sometimes come into their home and they need to share their parents, they need to share their toys, they need to share a lot of different aspects of their lives. Also, their social workers and guardian ad litems and the time they're sharing with their own biological parents. And so it can really help if you have space that your biological child can go to just kind of retreat, to have it be their own space, that maybe that foster child can have its own space where it has toys and it has a play area, a place to kind of regroup and to recheck themselves so that they can go out and interact with that foster child, especially if the foster child has a lot of emotional needs or physical needs. That might be a really great thing for your biological child. And if you don't, it might be really hard to have foster kids, especially if they are really close to the same age as your biological kids. And the last, maybe bad or hard part about having foster kids is that your biological kids or adopted kids just might have to pick up the pace a little bit. So on a Saturday afternoon, instead of, just kind of lounging around the house and then going to sports or to a friend's house, that child might have extra chores. It might have extra things that it needs to do to contribute to the family or to the household because there is a foster child or foster children in that home. So what are some beautiful things about having biological kids and foster kids? One thing is that everyone in the household gets to see those foster kids grow. They change, they become totally different kids than when they first came. And that is a beautiful picture of redemption that our biological kids or the kids in our home get to witness over time. It's just a really beautiful picture of God's grace and his, the power of family, the power of unconditional love. And so that is a beautiful thing about fostering kids when you have biological kids in the home. Another really beautiful thing about biological kids and fostering is that these kids get to love kids who are broken. So a lot of times I think that all of us can kind of be scared or push away people who look different or act different. Maybe people who have special needs or, situations that are outside the scope of what we're used to seeing. But when you become a foster parent, your biological kids will get to see a gambit of lots of different kids and emotions and cultures and people. And you will be able to really just teach that child that the world is so much bigger than just their home or their small community or their church. And they will begin to love the broken. And lastly, the beautiful part about fostering when you have biological kids is that when you foster kids, your kids automatically will grab a heart for these kids. They will see that children need families, and a lot of times these kids will grow up and foster or adopt. I know in our family, 2 out of our 3 original kids, if you will, they've already expressed interest and a certainty, really, that they want to adopt and or become foster parents. And so that's an impact that you can make on the kids that are in your home that you wouldn't otherwise, going maybe once a week and helping for an hour, somewhere else. That does not leave as big and a lasting of an impact as sharing your home and your family and your food and all that you are with a foster child. So let's talk really quick about one way to make it work when you have biological kids and foster children. And one way to make it work is to be able to really consider the age group of the foster kids that might come into your home. I know a lot of people they don't want to mess with birth order. So basically what that means is they don't take kids that are older or the same age as the kids who are already in their home. And so we've kind of followed this pattern as well, minus a couple placements. We've always taken younger kids. It's worked really well for us and our home. At the same time, if you feel prompted or, led to take older kids or someone else, I encourage you just go with your gut and really be prayerful, because there really isn't an exact formula to make a foster situation work. It really depends on how you feel led. But generally speaking, we have taken kids who are often really 5 years or more younger than our biological kids, and that's been really effective for our family. What's also worked for our family is when we've consulted our original family and we've asked them, are you ready to take a placement? If so, what age group, what gender, where would they sleep? How is this going to work out? And so when that child is in compliance and they're old enough to understand and they're willing and they're wanting to foster, more than likely that foster placement will be successful because they are all in. And so that's just one way that we have made it work, is that we have consulted with all of our family before taking a foster placement. Another way foster parenting can work when you have bios is to make sure that your time ratio is higher than the needs ratio. So what that means is that you have enough time to tend to your biological kids as well to foster kids as well. So if you bring in a foster child and they have significant needs, and maybe you have one parent that's in the household, they work full time, they come home, they're trying to tend to the major needs of this foster child and be a parent to their biological child, that may not work. Another example, if you have two parents and maybe you have a couple children and your foster child has significant needs, you are able to tend the needs of both the biological child and the foster child. And in addition to that, I would just encourage you to make sure that you spend one-on-one time with all of the kids in your home. So whether that's bio or adopted or foster, to really make sure that these kids get one-on-one attention, just to fill their love tank and to make sure that they are, feeling secure and that they have a position in your family that's vital and important, and that you love them and that they are assured of their place in your family. So what maybe doesn't work so well when it comes to having foster kids and your own biological kids? One, we kind of talked about, is if there's not a great ratio. You don't have a lot of time and you want to bring in kids with significant needs, or kids that require a lot of time. If you have a biological child that maybe has major needs and yet you're trying to foster over here, and that child is going to be limited in their access or their ability to really reach you and have your time, that foster placement may not work out quite as well. And lastly, when does a placement maybe not work when you have biological kids? And this, I would say, is the most important of all. When you have a biological child that does not want to foster, if they are against fostering, if they feel like they need some space, maybe you had a foster placement and that placement left and they need some time to grieve or to process or kind of regroup, and they are against having another foster placement, I would highly encourage you not to take another foster placement. Wait until the entire family is ready, including your spouse and all of your children. And at that time, if you say yes, more than likely that foster placement will be successful, because that child, your biological or adopted children, they need to be ready to take another foster placement. And these are my final thoughts. Taking foster kids as well as having biological kids, it can seem kind of scary. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions or maybe a lot of fears that child will harm your child, or that foster kids will impact negatively your own biological children. However, I say every time that we take a risk for the benefit of someone else and we do it in a safe and wise and thoughtful manner, our hearts just grow, our family grows, and our biological children and their understanding of the world, other people, and the brokenness that's around them, it will grow. They will become better citizens, better individuals, better parents themselves, and possibly better foster and adopted parents one day because you took a child into your home. I encourage you, if you're thinking about becoming a foster parent, sit down and talk to your biological children. Ask them lots of questions. Maybe have them watch movies or videos or clips about what it really means to be a foster family, because fostering, it really isn't something one person in the household does. It is a group effort. It is a family thing that everybody in the home becomes a foster family. We are all engaged and we're all invested, and that's vital to make a foster placement successful. When we got relicensed, I believe after our 11th year, the state contacted my older biological son and my older biological daughter. They asked them questions like, do you think that your biological parents should continue to be foster parents? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And what they said was that our biological parents are patient, which I don't think that we always are, but patient, and that they have a ton of love to give. And so when I heard that, literally, I was like crying my eyes out, because I thought, we wonder when we put our kids in situations and expose them to the world and hard things and, hard kids, we wonder the impact that it will make. But my kids are in their 20s and they are amazing, incredible kids. And for them to say yes to continuing to foster, I realize that the impact that fostering has made on them far outweighs anything that's been hard along the way. So go out, say yes, and you will find that fostering has impacted not only you, but also your biological kids in an incredible and awesome way. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe below. Go out, live bold, be brave, and we will see you next time.